All right, good evening, everyone. Welcome to the Redevelopment Commission meeting on February the 20th, 2023. First item on the agenda is roll call.
Deb Hutton here.
Sarah Bowerly Danson here.
Randy Cassidy here.
Deborah, you're on mute.
Yeah,
You wanna do
Deborah,
roll
you're
call?
on.
Alice looks like she can't hear
Actually,
me.
we're on mute, so
Oh,
that's
okay.
my mistake.
Deborah, can you hear us?
Yeah.
Okay.
Solved. Thank you. Appreciate that.
We're doing roll call,
Okay.
so it's your turn.
If it's my turn, Deborah Meyerson here.
And Cindy Canarney here. Staff present?
John Zodi with the Hand Department.
Christina Finley, Head Department.
Larry Allen, Legal Department.
Brent Pierce, Hand Department.
All right. Next item on the agenda is reading of the minutes for February 6th, 2023. Do any commissioners have any comments or questions? If not, I'll entertain a motion.
Deb Hutton, I'll move to accept the minutes of February 6th, 2023.
And Sarah Bowerly Danson, I'll second.
I have a first and a second. I need a vote via roll call, please.
Deb Hutton, yes.
Sarah Bowerly Danson, yes.
Randy Cassidy, yes.
Deborah Meyerson, yes.
Cindy Canarney, yes. Next item on the agenda is examination of claims for February 17th, 2023 for $312,913.63. Do any commissioners have any comments or questions? If not, I'll entertain a motion.
Randy.
Deborah Meyerson, I'll make a motion to accept the examination of claims from February 17th for $312,913.63.
Deb Hutton, second.
We have a first and a second. I need a vote via roll call, please.
Deb Hutton, yes.
Sarah Bowerly Danson, yes.
Randy Cassidy, yes.
Deborah Meyerson, yes.
Cindy Canarney, yes. Next item on the agenda is examination of payroll registers for February 10th, 2023 for $35,571.22. Do any commissioners have any comments or questions? If not, I'll entertain a motion.
Randy Cassidy, I'll make a motion to pay the claims as presented.
Deb Hutton, second.
We have a first and a second. I need a vote via roll call, please.
Deb Hutton, yes.
Sarah Bowerly Danson, yes.
Randy Cassidy, yes.
Deborah Meyerson, yes.
And Cindy Canarney, yes. Next item on the agenda is the director's report.
Thank you, Madam President, Commissioners, good evening. Number of things on my report tonight. We'll be having our second hearing for the home ARP plan tonight, so forward to hearing any additional comments on that. Last week, we issued the first request for information for the Hopewell project for blocks 8, 9, and 10, which are the blocks south of First Street. You all should have been on that distribution list, so let us know as you have questions. Those proposals are due back to us April 12th here at the city, so we look forward to engaging with developers. I've heard from a number of them already and started conversations, so that's good. The community development block grant proposals that you approved on February 6th, they'll be before the council on March 1st at their regular meeting, so I want to let you know that. We are in the beginning stages of exploring a residential tax increment finance district or districts here in Bloomington, which would allow for the capture of tax increment for residential development. So I wanted to let the commission know that we're still kind of in the information gathering stage, but we're working on that, and we'll have more to share with you hopefully very soon there. But wanted to let you know that that was coming down the pipe most likely. We are hiring for a new position in hand. We're in interviews for a new affordable housing program manager position. And the last thing on my report, I will be giving Mr. Crowley's report tonight and have an item there, but I do want to ask Brent Pierce to maybe share a word with you. Brent?
Thank you, Director. Brent Pierce here. I'm the Assistant Director for the balance of this week. My last day with the Hand Department is on Friday. This week I've accepted a position up in Indianapolis. I'm an attorney by trade, education, and so I'm going to go back to practicing. I will have been with the Hand Department for going on just about 2.5 years. So, and it seems like about 6 months, honestly. I had a great time working here. I love the city, and I love of everyone that I've worked with at the department and around City Hall and boards and commissions. This just happened to come along and it seemed like a great opportunity, so I accepted and talked with Director Zoe and Mayor Hamilton, and it's been a couple of weeks ago. So Friday is my last day, so thank you to everybody in this room for all of your hard work. I know a lot of the topics that I've worked on, affordable housing specifically, is very complicated in Bloomington and can be very frustrating, but is very necessary. So keep it up. I'm certain that everybody will. Thank you for allowing me to play a small part for the last couple of years, and I wish everybody the best, so thank you.
Well, thank you.
Yeah,
Good luck
thank
to
you
you.
very much.
Thank you very
and best of
much.
luck.
Appreciate it. Look forward to collaborating with you as we connect our communities.
That would be great, yeah. Thanks a lot.
Appreciate it.
That concludes the report from hand.
All right. Next on the agenda, is there a legal report?
Just very briefly, I'll just note that you took over possession of the CFC Showers building. Before we closed on that property, Aztec Engineering was in the process of moving out, so we have finished their move out. The next step for that will be we did the walkthrough already, we did the inspection, so we'll have to authorize release of the security deposit. I just wanted to give you all a heads up about that. Otherwise, I'm happy to answer any questions for you.
All right, thank you. Is there a treasurer's report? All right.
I'm here, sorry, kind of push a bunch of buttons. No report, but happy to answer any questions.
All right, thank you. Business development updates.
Mr. Crowley's out of town, so I'm going to give his report tonight. I just have one item. I'm not sure I've ever been able to introduce John Fernandez. The very first person I ever worked for here at the City of Bloomington was an intern. John's, what's that? Yeah, I didn't say when it was. But John, as many of you know, Mayor Fernandez, our former mayor, has been brought on to help push the ball forward at the Trades District as Senior Vice President over at the Mill. And he reached out to us as staff and asked if we could swing by the meeting and just say hi to everybody. And Madam President, it's okay, just maybe give him a minute or two to
Just 1 minute.
say hello. Mayor Fernandez.
I can do that. Well, Thanks, John. Yeah, I really appreciate the opportunity to just stop by now that I'm in this role. I know many of the people in the room, some longer than others, and there's some new faces of people I've not had the pleasure of working with before. So, you know, with this new relationship, you're certainly going to be working very closely with the Redevelopment Commission. So I thought it'd be one of the first items on my to-do list is to come just personally thank you for supporting the partnership agreement between the city and the mill. Certainly want to thank you for your continued support of the mill itself. I think it's, you know, Patty's and the team there have done I think a tremendous job creating a center of, you know, entrepreneurship for our community. And there's a lot more potential. And, you know, with your leadership and commitment of the city and certainly the BDC's commitment to be able to push forward the Trade System Tech Center, I think we really are well positioned to do some pretty exciting things. And the synergy between the mill and what we're trying to do to take that Trades District and the Tech Center just makes a lot of sense to me. So I'm really grateful that you all agreed to do that. And I'm even more grateful that Pat asked me to take on this role. I think it is a really interesting time to be involved in this kind of regional economic development work. I think as many of you know, that's been a passion of mine for a long time. While I took a detour with the work I was doing in the legal world for the last decade, I'm really excited about getting back into the area of work that I'm really passionate about. And I think this is an inflection point. I mean, there's unbelievable activity happening down at Crane these days. Some really significant new investments. The partnerships between the mill, Crane, Indiana University, Indianapolis. It's just, I think we're really well positioned to do some transformational things. So I'm still in very much in the exploratory phase, digging in, trying to understand the current state of not just the projects, but what else is going on in our innovation ecosystem. and looking for opportunities to, drive some new initiatives, but also, frankly, look for if there's any obstacles or things that we need to address to make it, get some of the friction out of the system. And so I'm sure over the next several weeks, I'll be communicating early and often with all of you, but today I just wanted to make a quick introduction. I've given you my card. I'd be happy to reach out one-on-one with anyone as we go forward, but thank you.
Welcome, John. We're certainly thrilled that you assumed the position, and I think I can speak on behalf of all of us. We're excited for the future. All right, that concludes your report?
That's it,
All right.
thank you.
All right, on to new
Thanks,
business.
everybody.
Next item of business is resolution 23-115, approval of funding for tree removal for First Street reconstruction project. Who would like to speak to us regarding this?
Good evening, Matt Smiles with the engineering department. In December of 2022, an engineering department received bids for the tree removal on West First Street. 4 bids were received, with Ellington Tree Experts being the lowest bidder at $10,800. We'll be removing 26 trees from the corridor for utility relocation work. And West First Street plans call for planting 84 new trees. Happy to answer any questions.
All falls within the budget.
It does.
With that said, I'll make a motion for approval.
I just have one question.
Yes.
So the bid that we're accepting was vastly different from the others. Have we had a lot of experience with this contractor?
Yes, they've done numerous projects for the city before, satisfactory.
All right, awesome, thank you. All right, any other questions from commissioners?
I just have one
Go
comment.
ahead.
I'm really happy to hear that there were 4 different bids. That was excellent.
Yes.
I thought of you when I read that, by the way. All right, any other questions from commissioners? If not, Commissioner Cassidy, is your motion?
Motion.
Okay. All right,
Deb Hutton, second.
we have a first and a second. I need a roll call vote, please.
Deb Hutton, yes.
Sarah Bowerly Dansman, yes.
Randy Cassidy, yes.
Deborah Myerson, yes.
And Cindy Canardi, yes. Resolution passes. Next item of business is resolution 23-16, addendum to agreement with FC Tucker. If you'd like to speak to us regarding this.
I imagine this will be me, I guess, yeah, so, since, who else, okay. Fantastic. So as I mentioned in my report, this is dealing with the next 3 resolutions actually are gonna deal with the Showers Business Plaza, which you all recently completed the purchase on with the approval of City Council. The first step of this is kind of a person to come in and manage the leases, because this is going to be an ongoing project, and we have leases that extend up to 2026, 2027. We need somebody, we felt like, to one, be the face with the tenants who's fully directed at their needs and where we can have good relationships with them, but also make sure that they're finding spaces that fit them. And then also just kind of be the point of communication with the city and with the RDC to give us our good options for what they are in terms of managing those leases over time. So we have had a relationship with Chris Cochran, who works under the label, under the company of FC Tucker Real Estate. So he is the realtor who's agreed to take on these services under the current terms that we have with him under this addendum. So this addendum really just adds a property to his portfolio of RDC properties already. Otherwise, the terms remain relatively unchanged besides extending the duration of the contract.
Question? So it has to do with both reviewing existing leases. So if someone's already there, we inherited them, or City Hall inherited them, Showers Building inherited them as lessees. So keeping them going, taking care of them. Someone leaves, we're still not doing something with the building for 2027, so it's getting a new tenant in there to lease in the future until the time is over, when we start to reconstruct. So taking care of old tenants or current tenants, as well as any new ones that might come along to fill the spaces while we wait.
Potentially. So we don't know when we're going to be able to start the project, right? We've already put out kind of the RFQ to see if we can get some designers for the police headquarters kind of project and fire administration. So we'll have to complete a large part of that process to see what kind of renovation is necessary before we can actually set our time frame.
Sure.
That time frame might be shorter, it might start as early as next year or the end of this year even. We just need to understand what that is first, kind of, but as we get that information, we also want to be able to communicate that with tenants. We have already had several tenants kind of reach out to us and just talk about the prospect of changing locations and whether we're okay with that and how we want to alter those leases. And then, yeah, we also of course discuss if the timing would work out and the space would work out, how we want to strategically release some of those spaces if that's an opportunity. So we don't have the time frame. I'm just currently, as they're documented, some of the leases go that long. That's not to say we won't enter into negotiations, just to like shorten those up or to alter them or just to whatever fits with our needs and the tenants' needs. So I can't give you a firm timeline. I'm sorry, that's a little bit wishy-washy, but that's exactly why we want somebody like Chris, so that ball doesn't get dropped between what the city's doing internally, what the RDC is doing internally, and what the tenants will expect.
Okay, thank you.
How many tenants are we dealing with, Larry? And I mean, this is a time frame that this will go on for the next 2 or 3 years. So I know the primary aspect of where it is with police headquarters. So where that moves into, you know, we don't have, you're entering into this with Chris and want to keep everything in continual dialogue with the tenants and potentially moving them within the space to meet their lease needs or just terminate the leases.
Yeah, if we can do that, we don't, this is the part of the design also, is like, how much space is gonna be used by the police, you know, on the design, how much will be left over, that was part of the conversation we had with city council, and we weren't totally sure even that, whether they can be moved within the spaces, or whether we'll need to terminate the leases or let people out of their leases. In terms of the number of leases, I don't know the specific number, I'm happy to look it up, I think it's 14 or 15, somewhere around there. I could be shorting that number a little bit, that's just what number sticks in my head. And I'm trying to remember which part of that is also counting CFC has a lease and Cook has a lease and things like that. So, but it's somewhere around that number.
Chris will be the person that will be taking care of everything and then reporting back to you, they'll report to us.
Yeah, so that's exactly right. So we're trying to make sure we're coordinating, obviously understanding the legal requirements that the RDC has to follow even after we've assumed the leases. And then also just one of the key guiding principles behind this sale, particularly with tenants, is to try to make that transition as smooth as possible. You know, we're trying to be good stewards of the community, build really good relationships with them. We want to make sure that they have a relatively good experience. It's not just about us trying to force everybody out or force their hand. Like, we really want to communicate and try to find. Some of these are nonprofits that operate in our community. We want to make sure we find space that fits exactly what they need and is doing. We're doing right by them essentially and making this a good project for everybody.
Working out so we still keep the private individuals working downtown to help support our community.
Yeah, sometimes that's the case. Some people need to be closer to the Justice Center, for instance. Some people like to be centrally located. So we have opportunities, and I think that Chris is going to be good at navigating what we need to do. For sure.
So in the original professional services agreement, the compensation is listed as $125 per hour. And I was just checking to see, is that still the rate? And then also there's not, I didn't see anything in here that's an indication of kind of an upper bound of hours. So I'm just kind of curious how you all think about this from the perspective of how many, like how much time this is gonna take in addition to, like how many hours of additional, duties will this create for the contractor in expectation?
So the pay isn't actually just hours, so that is everything that falls outside of a lease agreement. So
Okay.
Chris gets paid, I mean, that is part of the duties, so for the
Okay.
base rate in terms of that particular type of compensation, but there's also, we have addendums for the leases of properties, and a percentage of those leases goes to the real estate agent, which is pretty common for commercial leases, so that's how Chris would also potentially get paid. So as he's negotiating new leases or finds them in a different place with a new lease, he would get a percentage of that, and that would likely be his compensation as opposed to that $125 an hour.
Was kind of surprised that was the way that it was structured, so.
at the time that we did the original agreement, it was because there was also some marketing up front that we needed to do before we went to, started entering into sale or lease agreements with other people. So that was kind of to compensate for that upfront marketing cost that he would face is like $125 an hour.
Okay, so then you really only, then this is really just the compensation is just gonna be on a percentage of the lease.
We would anticipate that, yeah.
Okay.
And if there is another conversation, it's also something that as we go forward and kind of monitor going forward, if it looks like it's going to incur a lot of stuff outside of that compensation and that there would be a significant expense, we would want to put a cap on that, so we bring that back to you, kind of to say not to exceed, just to give you a sense of where we are with that funding. Also, so we can budget, properly.
Compensation for current leases are just on an hourly basis right now.
Well, so the current leases, yeah, there wouldn't be any, but it's more in anticipation that there's gonna be a future lease, so that's kind of the negotiation. There will be a lot of movement of tenants either way,
Either way,
and
that's
so there would be potential for new leases there.
Any other questions from commissioners? Is there any comment from the public? If not, I'll entertain a motion for resolution 23-16.
Deb Hutton, will make a motion to approve, resolution 23-16.
Deborah Myerson, I'll second.
We have a first and a second. I need a vote via roll call, please.
Deb Hutton, yes?
Sarah Bowerly Dansman, yes.
Randy Cassidy, yes.
Deborah Myerson, yes.
And Cindy Canardi, yes. Next item of business is resolution 23-17, addendum to agreement with Sarge Property Management. I'm guessing Larry is gonna talk to us about this.
I guess so. So again, the corollary with Showers Business Plaza. So this is specifically for the day-to-day property management. So both setting up and receiving of leases, setting up and receiving of rents every month, doing 24/7 maintenance calls, providing opening and security of the building if necessary, certain ongoing contracting that we've used that we might need. Sorry, I'm trying to finish a sentence before I move on to a second sentence. That we might need, which sometimes we're trying to negotiate cleaning with our own cleaning staff, but if we need to fold that under Sarge presents us that opportunity. So we use Sarge Management right now for College Square to do these same services. So they're taking on, again, similarly, an additional property. Their compensation, again, very similar to the way it is with Chris. They take a percentage of the monthly collected rents, which is part of their compensation package. So that remains unchanged. So this is an addendum to their agreement just to add that property. The benefit here is to, again, have a property manager that's fully dedicated. The alternative that we have is relying on our own property supervisor, JD, who just does not have the staffing or resources to take care of a commercially leased building. Particularly, one that we want to provide, again, a high level of service to the tenants to make sure if there is a maintenance request, there's something locked out, there is a problem with just negotiating how rent's paid and how the utilities are billed also to the tenants. We want them to get those answers immediately. We want it to be dedicated to them and not be a side project of a city staffer. So that's one of the reasons why we thought it's wise to bring on Sarge to kind of help manage this property as well.
Any questions from commissioners?
So this is simply an addendum to an existing contract, so it just continues on with the relationship we've had from that.
It does, and it obviously expands the portfolio from just College Square now to include the business plaza.
Any other questions from commissioners? Is there any comment from the public? If not, I'll entertain a motion for resolution 23-17.
I'll make a motion to approve resolution 23-17.
And Sarah Bowerly Dansman, I'll second.
We have a first from Commissioner Myerson and a second. I need a vote via roll call, please.
Deb Cotton, yes?
Sarah Bowerly Dansman, yes.
Randy Cassidy, yes.
Deborah Myerson, yes.
And Cindy Canardi, yes. Next item of business is Resolution 23-18, addendum to contract for landscape maintenance with Nature's Way.
So this is the third of three contracts. Now, in Resolution 2308, you all had approved an agreement with Nature's Way to manage the Trades District, and specifically the landscape maintenance of the Trades District, which we appreciated. This actually covers two things, not just the showers, business plaza, although that's included here as well. So let me talk about the first thing. So Nature's Way came back and recommended some tree pruning around the Trades District and off the trail to us, which would be a cost outside of their original contract. So we thought that wise to include an addendum and to pair this up while we're doing the showers portion of this as well. That cost is not to exceed $625 just to go around and do that tree trimming for the health of the trees and also to kind of keep them out of the way there. And then this also takes on the interior maintenance of plants within the building itself and kind of the watering and making sure that there's some vibrant life in there again. Obviously it's a beautiful facility. It's very nice. We have Nature's Way that comes in here also in City Hall and does this. The difference between that contract and this contract is you own the showers building, and so we're gonna have you do this contract. So it's just a follow on. Taking the cost, so we did have a carryover cost. We had a carryover cost from February. It was estimated about $263 a month. And so just extrapolating that for the rest of the year, we think $4,000 gives a little bit of room in case there's anything extra comes up with the tree pruning or anything extra that comes up with plant maintenance. We just gave ourselves a little bit of runway there, but it would make the total overall contract amount to be $44,000. So it's $40,000 to do the Trades District. And we're adding $4,000, which includes the tree trimming into this.
Tree trimming and interior plant maintenance.
That's right.
I've been hit with many limbs myself around the Trades District, so I'm happy that that's included.
Okay. I'll make a motion to approve.
All right.
Let me just ask some questions if I could. With this resolution, which is 2318, some of the exhibits, like Exhibit A, are 2308, which is the earlier one. So in the practicality of things, should these be now 18 because they're exhibits in this resolution, or is it okay that the 08 because they're remnants of the old resolution relevant to the current?
It's really an Exhibit B, so in that case, and I apologize, I wasn't able to change the header there because of the way when it was signed, it was scanned.
Yeah.
And that's just a mistake on my part whenever I was trying to enter this in. We should have had a cover page there to show that that's actually Exhibit B to this, because Exhibit A, well, no, I correct myself again. Exhibit A is the addendum, Exhibit B is the quote, so Exhibit C is the old resolution, so we can make sure that that's noted when it's stored with the new approval.
Okay, thank you.
Can I just ask one other question, sorry? Just because, I don't know why this came up, I know that we've already approved this, but can you just remind us again, what the funding, like where the money is coming out of for this and how it fits in the, like, is this TIF money, and if so, because it's maintenance, and like maintenance is also like indoor stuff, so I just wanted to kind of clarify like how that works.
Because this is maintenance, it does not come out of TIF. So this
Okay,
comes
got
out
it,
of
okay.
rental revenue. So
Okay.
the way we pay for this is literally the rents that we're getting
Got it.
from the Showers Business Plaza and College Square and all those things. So it comes from that 444 account, which is like the unrestricted account for
Right.
the RDC that we use for
Okay,
maintenance. It's not TIF eligible because it is just direct maintenance. It's not urban.
Okay, great. So just my other question is sometimes when we get these resolutions and when it's coming from the 444 account, it says it explicitly and sometimes it doesn't. So I'm curious to know kind of why sometimes versus others.
Yeah, so this one does say explicitly, but it's just changed in terms of it's not in the whereas clause, it's down in the actual point, section number 2. what you're finding, and I
Oh,
don't
okay.
say it's called the 444 account, so I
Oh.
try to do that as a matter of course.
I got it.
No,
I didn't, okay.
that's
I
a
didn't
good
realize-
note though, is to like make sure that we're calling that out in the whereas clauses and being clear about it. I know also originally, it's an iterative process, we internally call it the 444 account all the time, and I put it in resolutions for a while as the 44 account, people were like, what are you talking about? We don't know what those numbers mean, and it's just our internal account numbering
Yeah.
system, so I'll try to do a better job of making sure we're calling out which kind of account that is, and like call it the services account.
I know that you're very good about making sure that we're spending the money where we're supposed to be spending it, but it is nice to have it in the whereas clauses, because then if people are concerned, because they think that we're using money for, things that we shouldn't be using money for, you can say, well, the whereas clause makes it very clear.
And we do also try to know, just for everybody else's sake, I know you all know this, is when we're gonna use the consolidated TIF, we try to be very clear what we're using the consolidated TIF from, and even the sub area for which the consolidated TIF is gonna be, so you know kind of where it started, where it lingered, and where that fund's good. Even though you can use any of the consolidated TIF funds for the consolidated, we try to call it near base, because that's how it is accounted for internally.
Thank you, Liz.
Brings up a quick question in regards to revenue. Based upon our 444 account, we have the revenue to cover these ongoing expenses.
We do, yeah, and you can hear it from Mr. Underwood as
Oh.
well, but yeah, that's one of the things we also make sure, before we engage in any of these obligations that are gonna last for the whole year, is that we do have the funds to go. And we anticipate we'll also have, there are increased costs, obviously, with Showers Business Plaza, but for right now, there's also increased revenue from now receiving those rent revenues starting from February on, to help offset some of those costs.
All right, I'll ask for comment from the public on resolution 23-18. All right, if not, Commissioner Cassidy, you made a motion.
Motion approved.
All right, is there a second?
Sarah Bowerly Danson, I'll second.
All right, I need a vote via roll call, please.
Deb Hutton, yes.
Sarah Bowerly Danson, yes. Sorry.
Randy Cassidy, yes.
Deborah Myerson, yes.
And Cindy Pinarni, yes. Resolution 23-18 passes. Next item is resolution 23-19, extension of funding for lighting installation for Hopewell Phase 1 East.
I could talk about this if you want to be a backup, but I don't know if you're here to talk about it, it's up to you.
I was here if needed be.
Okay.
Does Randy have to
I'm
recuse himself?
recusing myself.
Yeah,
on this.
please,
Absolutely.
thank you. So this was a resolution you all passed at the end of last year, it's 2295, and with Cassidy Electric, so there was if you recall, once we did the demolition on Phase 1 East of the hospital site, one of the things we did is disconnect the electricity. That unfortunately also disconnected the lights in the center stone, and we were very concerned with that. You also approved payment to Duke Energy to make sure we could reconnect that power. This was the second part of that, to make sure we had a contractor that could actually help us reconnect those lights and get them working again. The work hasn't been completed, and in the original resolution, it expired at the end of the year, so we wanted to extend that approval for the project to be carried out, to make sure the work can get carried out, and we can pay Cassidy Electric to perform that work. So that's what this is, kind of a cleanup resolution to extend that timeline. The original funding, I think it says here, yeah, it said it expired in February 1st, so we just want to make sure we're going to keep that out to May 1st. And as my understanding, Matt, you can let us know for sure that work should have already started. If it's not, it will start immediately, is that correct?
Work has not started yet. There's some coordination that had to take place with Duke Energy. I believe that's very close to being wrapped up, so assuming that gets taken care of in the next week or so, we're ready to go moving forward.
And so this is not an increase in the cost, this is just an extension. So we're not, this is easy.
All right, any other questions from commissioners?
Is May the 1st sufficient time?
It should be, yes.
Any other questions? Any comment from the public? All right, I'll entertain a motion for resolution 23-18.
Sarah Bowerly Danson, I'll motion to approve resolution 23-19.
Deb Hutton, second.
We have a first and a second. I need a vote via roll call, please.
Deb Hutton, yes.
Sarah Bowerly Dansman, yes. Deborah Epstein.
Oh, yeah, Randy can't do it.
Upper Creek.
Oh, okay, Deborah Myerson, yes.
Okay, Cindy Canardi, yes. Next item of business is resolution 23-20, addendum to lease agreement with Baird for space at College Square. Would like to talk about this one.
I apologize in advance for having to do it again. So this is a tenant in College Square. 2021, you all had approved an addendum to that lease to extend it through July 31st, 2023. Baird is looking for a new location from College Square, but they did want an opportunity to kind of extend that out so that as they continue to look, they have some security. And I know Alex was in touch with them, and so it felt like January 31st, 2024 was a reasonable date, and then gives them the ability to give us notice. If they do find a suitable location, they can give us notice and terminate the lease. So that's what this addendum does. It doesn't really come with any additional expenses. It just extends that lease a little bit further to give them some runway, and then provides a notice that if they give us 30 days written notice that they're going to vacate the property, and terminate the agreement. And we'd obviously give you notice of whenever we receive it.
All right, any questions from commissioners? Any comment from the public? Not hearing anything, I'll entertain a motion for resolution 23-20.
Deb Hutton, I make a motion to approve resolution 23-20.
Deborah Myerson, will second.
A first and a second, I need a vote via roll call, please.
Deb Hutton, yes.
Sarah Bowerly Dansman, yes.
Randy Cassidy, yes.
Deborah Myerson, yes.
And Cindy Canardi, yes. All right, move into our public hearing portion of our meeting tonight. And review home investment partnerships, American Rescue Plan, home ARP allocation plan.
Thank you, Madam President. Commissioners, as you know, on February 6th, we had our first public hearing for the allocation plan for our home ARP funds. This slide presentation is not different from what I shared with you a couple of weeks ago, but I do need to share with the public how much we're receiving, what the proposed uses could be. So I will run through these fairly quickly, and I'll verbalize those two items just to make sure that I am covering them. So the city's receiving $2,045,000, $237 to allocated through the home program through the American Rescue Plan to target 4 qualifying populations that are homeless or at risk of homelessness as defined by federal regulation. You can see those up here. In addition to being at risk or homeless, fleeing or attempting to flee domestic violence or dating violence, sexual assault, stalking, or human trafficking. And then the 4th population, those who require services or housing assistance to prevent homelessness or others who are at greatest risk of housing instability. The funds, well, it was just working, I'll just do this. The funds can be used for supportive services, so some of that direct service that is there and available. Nonprofit operation and capacity building. This is for organizations. I've sort of gotten more detail on this since we did meet last time. This is for organizations to prepare to run a program with this money. This is not general operating and capacity building for whatever their mission drives them to do. This is to specifically, to prepare for a home ARP funded program. So that is capped, of course, at 5% each, according to the limit. Rental housing development, acquisition and development of non-congregate shelter, and then tenant-based rental assistance, which is an existing program. So just to recap, over the last several months, we've done more than 30 meetings, been to the city council 3 times to invite public comment, last of which was last week, and gave this PowerPoint presentation, or a version of it, and answered questions from council members about that, and invited the public to submit comment as well. And of course, this is the second of 2 public hearings here at the RDC. Recommended that sort of we're continuing on the path where we look like we're going to be narrowing this to what could be a supportive services grant that would be rolled out when the funds are approved, probably later this year, to support assessment services, case management, street outreach, and then there are a couple of projects that we're tracking that could use money, that are eligible for this type of money due to their housing, having supportive housing units in their projects. And then, of course, I always want to say we want to support the Heading Home of South Central Indiana initiative. We don't want to reinvent wheels here. We've got a $5 million effort underway with what they're doing, and we certainly want to complement that. So the budget hasn't changed since the February 6th meeting. Looking at most of this being in supportive services, looking at what could be in rental housing projects. The $101,000 items you see are both capped, and then the city has administration and planning costs that it can absorb while we administer this allocation of funding, which has to be spent by September 30th of 2030.
So, quick question in regards to our supportive services aspects. What we set up that $783,000 for, is that something outside of this grant will be able to continue on from a funding source, or is this a one-time shot without having future revenues to keep the plan going?
Yeah, that's a great question. Councilmember Sims asked that Wednesday night, and this is one time. So one of the big conversations has been, what do we do after this funding is gone? And that's a big concern, because we have it to stretch over a certain number of years, and we want to see how that works best. If you want to do it for a couple or 3 years, or if you want to do it over 5 or 6. And so it doesn't stretch that far, and it's not coming back. And so we really have to be mindful of the focus of the supportive services, I think, and narrowing them enough to move the needle on these outcomes that we're looking at about making homelessness rare, brief, and non-repeating especially. So it's a great question, and one that has to continue the conversation, and has luckily been a part of each element of this.
So follow up to Randy's question, that it's, now we learn it's one time only. Can they use some of the funds for a grant writer, a grant researcher, to then be looking at the what's next after these funds are finished? It's not supportive services to current people, but it is in the sense of how do we keep these services going for these same people?
I think that would have some trouble there, to be honest. I think what I'm learning, I've done some, just so the commission knows, I've done a number of workshops on these funds over the last couple months. I think that would be tough. I think it's got to go into supportive services, or if it is operational and capacity building, it's got to be for the administration of this. So it's a good question, but I think given the narrowness of the supportive services, I think probably not. I think it's got to be
So essentially, it needs to solve a problem as opposed to continue to support a problem long-term.
Yeah, it's got to try to look at what outcomes can you have over this period of time to, make, of those 4 qualifying populations, how do you improve their outcomes with this money? And it's a tough thing when it's, the American Rescue Plan was, one-shot deal is $5 billion, and we're getting $2 million of it, and luckily we have that supportive, we have that network already, but how do we best complement that? And that's one of the things we're
I think it's interesting to think about solving things as opposed to perpetuating them long-term. So I'm excited to see what comes of it.
With that in mind, just wanted to jump in and follow up with the discussion that RDC at the February 6th hearing on these funds. And one of the ideas that had been proposed, at least amongst RDC at the time, was whether the funds could be possibly used for direct assistance to folks who either have accessibility needs on their homes or repairs, such as we had considered on the agenda at that meeting for certain emergency funds that were above and beyond what the usual threshold is. And I just was wondering if Director Zodi could clarify whether these funds would be eligible for that. It seemed at the end of the discussion on February 6th that was possible, but I realize these slides have not maybe necessarily been updated since that discussion. I just wanted to get further clarification on that, please.
Yeah, Commissioner Morrison, I haven't gotten an answer on that. So I did think I expressed concern last time about the amount that it could take when we use up funds quickly for that, but I haven't gotten further clarification on it. I will do that and follow up with you. We just haven't been able to do that yet. So. Okay,
would that mean that we might have a third public hearing to address that? I'm not really fully clear on the parameters of the public hearing as part of the RDC, and then let's say once the clarification is provided on whether direct assistance is eligible, of how to include that in the overall hearing on these funds?
Yeah, so we would, I'm drafting the plan now, and so once it's drafted, it'll go up for public comment on March 6th for 15 days, and so we could get more comments there. That's the next round of public input that'll come, and then it's, the goal is to submit it to HUD on March 24th. So if that answers your question, that would be the next opportunity for public input. So, and in each of these sessions, I've asked for public input. If someone wants to email me now or anytime, they can send me an email at bloomington.im.gov. Ask for those to be back by March 15th. They'll be right in the middle of the public comment period, so I have time to incorporate those. And part of the plan process is that you include public comments that you receive. So I've got lots of pages of notes that I have to sort of synthesize and get down to bullet points, and those are actually included in the plan as well. And then also any comments that we didn't accept, right? So if there was a sort of robust comment thread of one topic and we chose not to incorporate that into the plan, we have to explain why that is. So there'll be some more opportunity for public comment there, and I do again have to include all the public comments in the draft plan.
Thank you.
Yep.
Any other questions from commissioners?
I have a question.
Okay.
So, because, and you've talked about how this is a one-time injection of money, and that, and because the way that you're developing the proposal is to focus on supportive services, that, you know, hopefully the idea would be that we'd be able to find funding from other sources at some point so that we could continue them into the future. So I'm just kind of curious how much you kind of thought through kind of how you might incorporate into the plan kind of data and pulling out data and metrics in order to assess the effectiveness of the programs, and imagine that kind of data would be very useful when you're applying for continuation grants.
Yeah. So.
And I guess one of the other things that is sort of embedded in that question is, like, how do you think about what sort of metrics do you think you want to move? Like, in terms of how would you be able to tell that the project is working the way that you intend it to? Like, especially since we're talking about it seems like you're kind of focused on groups within the community of people who are experiencing homelessness that are, you know, that have really tough challenges that are really hard to address effectively.
Yep. So a couple things there. The plan requires that all the funds have to be, you have to make the funds available to all 4 qualifying populations in some way. They don't all have to be eligible for all 4 populations, but for instance, one of the supportive housing groups of units in one of the housing projects is for people undergoing substance abuse, mental health treatment. That is a certain population. It does not cover, for instance, someone experiencing domestic violence or fleeing domestic violence, but that is an eligible use as long as you have those fleeing domestic violence, et cetera, covered by another portion of the money, right? So of the $2 million, you have to say, okay, all 4 qualifying populations can access services through this money somewhere in the program. So when we do the supportive services grant, we've got to narrow it enough. We've got to narrow it and to keep it broad enough to where you're not excluding one of those 4 qualifying populations from receiving services. The data that comes is going to be hard, and I think heading home will tell you the data is tougher. I'm going to start with the PIT count, which is the point in time count for the homeless services that is conducted. The last one, I'll have to use January of 2022 for this plan because our data from this year that was just done a couple weeks ago won't be available until June. So we're going to start with that. And you have to sort of do needs and gap analysis. So how many beds do we have? How many beds do we need based on the number of people who are homeless at a given time? And that is quite a lift. And when you're narrowing supportive services, if you're doing triage, street outreach, medical services, you've got to sort of determine how many are receiving service now, how many additional will receive service, and what gap is being filled. That piece, that second step, after we submit the data that we can in our allocation plan, the idea would be when the supportive services grant program is laid out, in the application that we theoretically would draft at the city and offer to organizations to then apply for the funding, we would say, show us the outcomes, you know, show us the gaps. So I talked to a child care provider who can put forward data, for instance, that shows here are how many families would be at risk of homelessness, but for the fact that we are providing this child care to them. It's that kind of stuff, right?
Right.
So I don't know that we're gonna include that now as much as it would be saying, here's the plan for how we do that, and then make sure that that application to receive funding, which I expect to be a competitive process, you have to show us what metrics, what needles are you going to move with this money over what period of time, depending on how we make the money available, how long we make the money available. Does that help?
Yeah.
Okay.
Although the issue is like, I would imagine relying on things like pit counts. As Bloomington is known as the place that if you are experiencing homelessness in southern Indiana, you go to Bloomington because we're the only place that has services. So there is an issue that as we get more money for more services, more people could come here. So that's, and to get services, which is good, that means that there are more people that are getting the services that they need, but we need to think about that in terms of if we're going to measure ourselves based off of that, it's
Yeah.
a dynamic.
No, it's a good point, and one, it's not a perfect science, but I think one of the biggest pieces of feedback, or kind of why I talk about the assessments and sort of the navigation of it is, there are folks that may have gotten counted in the pit count, you know, are they receiving a coordinated entry assessment, right, which is a survey, basically, someone goes out and says, you know, Sarah, can I ask you these questions, and that's your assessment to be given services through coordinated entry. And that's a missing link. I think there isn't enough capacity to do those assessments, and so if we can focus on that, so that you have 250 people in the pit count, let's say, you know, how many of those are not receiving assessments, what is the path for them, and that's a big gap that I'm hearing from the consultation involved, so. Tough problem, so we'll get there. And then, of course, you know, Heading Home's doing all of its work, so it's trying to make sure it's working together there is important.
How do we work this together in the time frame that Cindy put out is actually going to hit the streets in regards to making a change as opposed to continually studying it? Because, you know, when you're homeless, you're homeless.
Yeah.
Or when you're close there, and what's it take to make that gap so we keep it from happening?
Yeah.
Because the dollars are only gonna be here, and as Deborah put it, what's that plan? I understand the supportive services, I mean, we just have to walk down south of town or downtown to see that there's problems out there. And the ones we don't know about yet are the ones that creep up on us, so.
Well, we're pretty, I think we're pretty unique as a community that's got, of this size, that has such an effort going that Heading Home has. They've got some long-term, you know, the Heading Home plan is a long-term approach to how do you move that needle, not to overuse that phrase, but how do you make homelessness rare, brief, and non-repeating? And this money comes along, and, you know, here's some things you can use it for, here are a lot of things you can use it for, so. To some communities, one community, for instance, wants to use all of their money to build a shelter. And that's all they're gonna, I wouldn't say that's all they're gonna do with the money, but they're getting $4 million, I think, so that's their project. For us, we've got programming needs extending out, because we may have, I won't say enough beds, but we may have capacity with some things that other communities don't, so we're trying to figure out how to keep some of that going. But it is a concern with the sustainability or lack thereof of what happens when the money's gone. I think to Commissioner Myerson's point is, can it be used for some one-time stuff that is not a programmatic, doesn't require the perpetuation of a staff person, for instance. It's, here's a person we helped through, you know, helping repair their home or something. Commissioner, if that's what you're getting at, it's how can we move that needle so that that person is no longer housing insecure or something like that, so.
That's the reason behind my question, thanks for clarifying.
I think it would be interesting to, you know, maybe think about using some funds on how we reduce the inflow of people that need this type of service. I think we talked about before, you know, it's kind of come one, come all, but at some point, any community has a capacity constraint. And, you know, I think that we're gonna get there very soon if all of our neighboring communities, use Bloomington to solve that issue for them. So how do we, how do we use some of these funds to, again, limit the inflow from other communities?
Even as the aspect we're looking at, John, and I don't think it can ever be utilized for economic development, because if the wages get higher, the chances of homelessness get less. So good economics always make for a rising tide for all those.
Thank you.
Are there any other comments, questions from commissioners? Are there any public comment? All right, not hearing any. This concludes our public hearing,
Thank you all.
and we'll move on to the next item, which is business and general discussion. Are there any comments or discussion from commissioners?
Sir. I have one question in regards to now that the city or the RDC and the city owns 2/3 of showers. As we look through this on an architectural aspect of how we're connecting and doing things, can we see what we can do about putting doors between them? And the reason I say that is the cooperative aspect of to the west and east going through, and even to the north to the county, because it always strikes me odd when I have to tell somebody at the front foyer of City Hall that they have to walk outside to go to our county offices. And this has been an ongoing thing since 1995, so silly as it may sound, it's just an ask for consideration to see what we can do to connect the three parts of showers, so now we all have that cooperative internal connection.
I can tell you for sure, we're gonna look to connecting the two parts of showers, the city and RDC. The last I heard, and I don't know, I'll pass along your comments, of course, but the last I heard is the way that the county end was set up and the way they leased it for private leases, what is against that back wall are largely private spaces from the county. That's what I had heard. I don't know if that's accurate. So that's an interesting thing to pass along to see if that's feasible to have some sort of public entrance. Because I know for us right now, if you go to the back end of this building, there's no clear way that we can make for a public entrance, like to go through, because it goes through either locker rooms or offices or something like that. But that's an interesting thought.
Well, architecturally, we have, a beautiful architectural building, and I'm sure we could probably figure out at some point how to do it, so.
I've told many people the nonsensical walk around of like, you've reached the wrong suite 220, you were looking for the county and building department and not the legal department of the city.
So, yeah.
When we were first presented with this, I think by Don Griffin and who knows, he had some person with him, but there was conversation about that. Then the counter conversation was, how can it be secure? Because that's a police station.
Sure.
Not just administrative, and therefore there have to be some security measures too.
Oh, yeah, I
in case
wouldn't
there's any
ever
problem.
want to do it in regards to the police aspect.
So,
I'm just
but
looking at-
there wasn't, right from the very beginning, there was discussion of that, part of the big plan.
And just rest assured, you're not gonna pop out the evidence room if we
Yeah.
have it there. That's heavily restricted. So, yeah, but we're looking at ways of, there could be shared hallways and, there's a fitness center there now, so could that remain potentially? So there's a lot of questions. It is early in the process, so this is the time to.
Why I ask, it's like, it's been a question since 1995, so, appreciate you looking into it very much.
All right, anything else for the good of the cause? If not, I'll entertain a motion for adjournment.
So moved, no problem.
Seconded.
All right, good night, everyone.
Great, thanks.
Good night.